So, blinks. What are the common issues with them? You would think that a blink is very simple. The eyelids just go blink, done. Wow, such a simple thing. Blinks are one of the harder things to animate on facial animation when you don't understand them. When you start understanding them and start understanding what to avoid, they're pretty simple, honestly. It's eyelid closes, opens, done, with a little bit of extra motion. But understanding the motion is the tricky part. There's a lot of misconceptions to blinks and a lot of little pitfalls that people will fall into that make blinks feel really weird. And there is an expression, the eyes are the window to the soul. The eyes, if you don't get the eyes right in animation, nothing's really going to look right. If the eyes look dead, if the eyes are kind of pointing in two different directions and the character feels unfocused, or if they're like, there's not a reason for the way they're looking, your animation's not going to work. No matter how good everything else is, the character's not going to feel alive. The eyelids are the window shutters. They are what close the windows and open the windows. If those don't work correctly, things are still not going to read quite right. So we need to really get blinks to feel good. So going in here, let's actually just go over a list of the common blink issues, and then I'm going to try and recreate them very quickly, and then we'll do a correct version just to kind of showcase certain things. So here is a list of common blink issues that I put together. And this is stuff that I've encountered as an animator. I've fallen into a lot of these myself, I will admit. I also see students fall into this all the time. So if you're a student at AM and you're doing a blink at some point, watch this list, take a screenshot. I can also post it later on. And so thank you so much for the sub. Aw, thank you so much. Geez, 10 months already. Thank you so much. So take a look at this list here. Get a screen capture of it. And if you're looking at feedback and I'm giving you feedback, you might notice I point some of these things out. So watch them, pay attention. So common issues. I'll just go through the list. We have timing issues when you're doing blinks. Many times, blinks are going to be way too fast or way too slow in student work. People just don't pay attention to how long is the blink. A blink is fast. It's like in the blink of an eye. That's an expression we use all the time. How fast is it? A blink of an eye. Well, how fast is a blink of an eye? How long does it take for your eye to close and then open up again? Can anyone answer that? Probably not. Because who's going to time a blink? How can you time a blink? Because your eyes are closed. How can you even look at it? So part of this is going to be looking at timing, understanding, looking at reference. Closing timing is the same as the opening timing. So when we close our eyes and then open our eyes, how long does that take? And not just the blink part, the ease of the eyelid. The eyelid is skin. It's just some skin right there. There's no muscle in there, which means that it can't just freeze and hold a pose super strongly. It's just some skin. It's just flappy skin. How long does it take to close and open? And then, are they the same? Very, very rarely will that timing be the same. Usually it'll be less time on one than the other. Usually, less time on the close, more time on the open. Usually. Not all the time. The eye only closes for one frame. So when the eye closes, it just closes, hits one frame, and then opens up. That's usually not enough time to read a blink correctly. Usually you want to hold the blink closed for 2 frames. This is going to give a clearer read to the actual blink. So we want to expand on that a little bit more and hold that blink. Again, is this always the case? No. You'll have fast, very fast blinks that you could do on one frame, but you're going to miss the compression. You're going to miss making the audience read that as clearly as you can. You offset the blinks. This is one of the biggest things that I tend to see. You have blink, blink, like that. One eye, then the other, and there's a little offset, even if it's just one frame. Eyes start to move at the same time, close at the same time, open at the same time. They are connected. There will be times when that doesn't happen, but those are usually because you've been hit in the head and your brain isn't functioning correctly. You've had too much to drink and your brain isn't functioning correctly. Or you get something in your eye and one eye is like trying to get that thing out. More often than not, our eyes blink together. The timing is in sync with each other. Now, a little history on why that is the way it is because Pixar, this is typically called the Pixar blink, that offset, was created when Toy Story was made. In Toy Story, if you look at their blinks, they have that little offset, one eye then the other. This was purposefully created because if you ever look at toys, like dolls that would close their eyes when you lay them down, usually one eye is kind of sticky compared to the other. So as you'd lay the doll down, one eye would close, the other would stay a little bit open, and then you'd lean it back up, and then they'd open up with different timing. It was made purposely to recreate the feeling of toys. But then other animators looked at Pixar and went, ooh, they know what they're doing. Look, see how they're doing this blink? We should do that in our stuff. Not realizing that there was a reason for why they were doing this. This is why when you're analyzing animation from other films, it's good to do master studies from them, but we cannot take it as the truth. Oh, see, this is how things move. This is how we have to animate blinks. Because maybe they change it for a reason. They did something different for a reason. So that Pixar blink, the offset blink, is not necessarily bad. But for most blinks, it's not going to feel right and it'll look like your character got hit in the head. Spacing issues. Eyelids move up and down in perfect sync. So this kind of goes against what we were talking about with the timing. So what we don't want is an offset in our timing of our blinks. They should be open on the same frame, closed on the same frame, open on the same frame. But the spacing, if you keep them perfectly in sync, eyes feel twinned. They just go whoop, whoop, and everything feels kind of mechanical and boring. So what you do is you offset your spacing. You have one eye, they both start closing at the same time, but one's just a little faster. So it closes a little bit more. Then, whoop, they're closed together. They open up. One eye opens up a little faster than the other. Whoop, they're open on the same frame. You're adjusting the spacing in between your open, close, open to make that the eyes feel organic and not mechanically perfect. So you do not want the eyelids to move up and down in perfect sync. Another common issue that I tend to see is the eyelid starts and stops too sharply. The eyelid, like I said before, is skin. So the spacing is going to have a little bit more ease when it starts to move and a lot of ease when it stops moving. We're going to cover this in the demo a little bit. You do not want the eye to just kind of lock in place, blink, blink, and then it just stays in place. There will be times for that, usually when a character is like freaking out and their eyes just pop open. But even then, you can get away with a little bit more ease than you would expect. Posing. So when you're posing the eyes, and this is like still part of blinking, when you're doing the actual posing of the blink, a common issue is that people tend to only use vertical motion in the eyelids. We're going to look at some reference later to show this. Blinks don't move vertically. Like we look at a blink, it goes up and down. No, they don't. We'll cover that a little bit later. It's really cool. It's one of my favorite things about blinks. The lids meet in the middle of the eye. So oftentimes people will do the blink and they'll close the bottom lid and the top lid together, meet in the center. No, our top lid does most of the work. Another common issue, the bottom lid doesn't move at all. No, the bottom lid doesn't do a lot of work, but it still moves. You've got a whole muscle around the eye that works to close the eyelids and do the blink. Because it's around the entire eye right here, it's going to affect the whole eye, the top lid and bottom lid. So you're going to have some motion in there. When you're doing a blink, there's a common issue of leaving the eyes in the default T-pose. And this kind of goes into eye posing, but it affects blinks as well because blinks rely on the pose you put them in. Eyes should not be left in their T-pose. So what I mean by T-pose is when you open up a rig, their eyes will be posed a certain way. Just like how when you open a rig, the body will be posed in a way. They've got their arms in a T-pose straight out. Would you leave the arms that way when you're posing your shot and go, I'm going to do a dancing shot. Whoop. And now they're dancing. I'm going to do a shot where the character is eating. Whoop. Now they're eating. No, you would pose the arms because they've got to use their arms to do something. Same thing with the eyes. The eyes, when you bring in a rig, they're in their default pose. It's not a nice natural pose. It's a rig pose, a T pose. Once you start moving your eye and posing and moving it and like animating it, you need to pose the eyelids to make it work. You can't leave them at their default. Same thing with the mouth. Same thing with the hands. I talked about this earlier, but hands, if you're leaving the hands at their default and going, yeah, I'll do them later, it's not that important. No. Hands are part of the pose. Just like how you wouldn't leave the arms at their default while you're posing the character, don't leave the hands at their default when you're posing a character. So, don't leave the eyes at their T-pose. When you're polishing the blinks, a common issue I see is no sympathetic action. When you blink, it's not just eyelids. It's a little bit of the skin. It's a little bit of the brow. Everything is connected. Once again, you've got a muscle that goes all the way around here. As that muscle contracts, it's going to affect the skin around the eye, which is going to affect the brows ever so slightly. It's going to affect the skin between the eye and the nose right here. You're going to get some reaction in there. So you need that sympathetic action. The eyes stay still during the blink. So as the blink goes, the eyeballs themselves just stay perfectly centered and don't move. Eyes will actually move during a blink. In animation, we will tend to move the eyes down, which solves the next issue, zombie eye syndrome, which I'll go over in a second. But we will lower the eye to create this kind of follow and reaction where the eyeball feels connected to the eyelid. In real life, the eye actually rolls upwards. As we blink, our eyes go up. Now, there's a reason for that, which ties into zombie eye syndrome. Why do we reverse the eye? Well, when we create a blink, with a lot of character rigs, their eyes are huge, much bigger than real eyes. If you look at my eye right now, the top lid is touching the iris, the color. The bottom lid is touching the iris at the very bottom. So the color of the eye is touching both lids. That means that when I'm blinking, there will never be a moment where you don't see the color of the eye. It's going to be there the whole time. With character rigs, their eyes are much bigger. So you see the white of the eye usually on the bottom, and you'll even see the white of the eye on the top sometimes. A good example of that is Mitchell's versus the Machines. Tiny little pupils in this big, huge eye. Now, what that means is as the eyelid goes down and blinks, there will be a moment where you just see the bottom, like half of the eye, that's just pure white. And that creates zombie eye syndrome. It's like they're dead or like they've been knocked unconscious. It's not interesting to look at because it's just this like ocean of white. So we will lower the pupil and the iris to follow the eyelid a little bit, so we always see a little hint of color. Again, that goes against real motion, but there's a purpose to it. And this is where studying reference is not the same as animating. We don't want to copy our reference. And then the last one is no pupil dilation. So pupils, the black of the eye, dilate and open close depending on light. If you've got a lot of light in your scene, they're going to shrink. If you're in darkness, they're going to expand. So if I turn off my light here, my pupils would expand. They get darker, blacker. If I suddenly punch up the light like this, my pupil is going to go whink and shrink down because there's a lot of light in my eye now. When you blink, you're putting your eye in darkness. If I close my eye here, it's totally closed. It's in darkness. Sure, my eyelid isn't totally 100% like light proof. There's a little light leakage in there because it's just skin, but it's still in darkness. So what's going to happen is the characters close their eyes, open it, their pupils will have expanded ever so slightly, and then it'll shrink back down because there's light in the scene. That's a great polish trick and really makes the eyes feel alive. It's not much. And you're usually not, like if a character's far away, like over here, you don't have to worry about it. But if you've got a close-up of your character, that adds so much. If a character is cute, the pupils explode in size. Yeah, you can do that as well. Pupils, like the Puss in Boots eyes, where it's just like all pupil. It's so adorable. And RNG Backtrack, hey, thank you so much for the sub. Aw, thank you. I really appreciate that. So, thank you. I really appreciate that. So, with this list in mind, once again, feel free to take a snapshot of it. I'll pose with it. Why do I do that? It's just going to get captured and like posted places and it's going to be horrible. There you go. So, take a screenshot. Get it? Ooh, it's pretty. It's black and white text. Wow, I put a lot of effort into it. Literally 5 minutes before the stream. Ooh. So take a screenshot of it. We're going to be going over some of those issues. We're going to kind of recreate them and just kind of go over them visually. And then we're going to go over and try to animate a proper blink and look at actual reference. So let's take a look here. Which button do I want to push? That one. I'm looking at my desktop and totally blanked out. So we're going to be using the Darius rig for this. This is also a good chance for me to do some testing on him. I've been doing some facial poses with him and I really enjoy working with him. He's really cool. This is the new AM rig for anyone who's curious. So we're going to be taking a look at him, and I've created a quick little setup here where we've got this camera focused just on the eyes, so we can get a nice quick blink in here. Okay. So we're going to be animating. Let's do 2 basic blinks that kind of cover a lot of the issues that we saw before. So I'm just going to go, let's go frame 20. We'll set a key on everything and start animating the blink. Now, some common issues we had. Top eyelid does all the work. So we're just going to take the eyelids here and let's do a quick blink. And, well, what's the timing of a blink? Who knows? I didn't look at reference, so I'm just going to guess. Blinks are really fast. I'll do it in 3 frames. Boop. Closed. There we go. And you'll notice that the eye doesn't close quite right on this side. Why? Because I didn't pose the eye. I'm just doing the default T-pose and hoping the blinks work. No, it's not going to work because the eyeball isn't, like, it's not posed correctly. It would be like trying to do a pose and keeping your character with the arms straight the whole time. It's not going to work. So, blink, and then 3 frames because the timing must be even. I'm sure that's what a blink is. Let's open this back up. There we go. Blink complete. I need to make that into like a sound bite. A random sound bite. And make sure my timing is right. I need to put that 1 frame ahead. There we go. 3 frames down, 3 frames up. So, how does this blink look? Boop, boop. Now, that doesn't help that I'm in step mode, so let me actually quickly open up my graph editor and switch my tangent types here. Default tangent type, let's go auto ease, and then out tangent auto ease, and set this to auto. Okay, so with that, there we go. We've got our blink. Done. Wowee. It's amazing. Polished my animation and good to go. No. So, common issues we're seeing. The eyes are completely in sync as they're going up and down. The timing is good in this case because they're starting to close at the same time, opening at the same time. That's good. But the spacing is perfectly symmetrical on both sides. That's not interesting. Other things. It's really just the top lid. There's no connection to the rest of the face at all. The bottom lid doesn't react. It's dead. This is a totally isolated motion. Now, something like this could work in a cartoony shot, Hotel Transylvania, something like that, if you really want to exaggerate things. But in most shots, especially like a Disney style or Pixar style, it's gonna feel weird. What else? Well, the eye ball itself doesn't move, so that's not good. And our timing is the same. So, not great. Not a great start here. Let's do another blink. And this is just a quick tip here. If you need to quickly set a key on everything, you can use something like a GUI picker. But let's say I just want to continually be able to set a key on this whole character. Click and drag to select all your controls. Open up your script editor. You find that in the bottom right corner, or go to Windows, General Editor, Script Editor, I believe. And for some reason, it's taking a little bit right here. Okay. So we've got our script editor open. Let's redo that selection. So I'm going to clear the script editor. You can hit this top button with the X right there. That'll clear it. That's totally fine. It's just clearing the history. It doesn't delete anything. Now, click and drag to select everything. There's the script to select the character. I can just click and drag to select all of that. Middle mouse drag it to my shelf there and create a button to select everything. But I can go a step further. I know I want to set a key. So I'm going to select everything, hit S to set a key. Boop. Now we've got keyframe results right there. So we've got all of this to set a key on my character. So I can now just take this, set keyframe, copy all of that, middle mouse drag it. Now, not the whole thing. Copy it into here, and then I can clear out the lines I don't want. So you can do that to create a little button. I'm just going to create a selection tool because I want to have the control to hit S if I want to. Another way to do this is select everything, go to Create, Sets, Quick Select Set right there. The only advantage of doing it with a script editor is that you can do multiple steps. So you can add that key element or anything else you want. Okay, so now I've got this quick button, boop, selects the whole character. Nice. So let's do another blink. We're going to do the next blink that I see often is the slow blink with the middle contact. So this blink, let's go, okay, frame 40. Let's go to frame 50, set a key. And this time I'm going to have the eye blink in the center because, well, the bottom lid's got to do some work, right? So take everything, blink, and get that line right perfect in the center. Like that. Once again, you'll see it doesn't actually close quite right. Oh yeah, and let's do a Pixar blink as well. That's a good one. And then go out the other way, and let's bring the eyelids back open. Okay. And then we're going to make it a Pixar blink by taking the right eye here, and I'm just going to offset the timing right there. Let's do 2 frames just so we can really see it. So we've got our first blink. Very even and boring. Next blink. Let's actually make sure it's not in step mode. For some reason, my auto tangents, let's just do this. Whoop. Key, and make sure, again, my curves are set to default tangents. There you go. Auto. Oh, that one didn't switch. There we go. That's why. So if you're noticing it's not going, just double check your default in and out. You want those to be whatever it is you want to work in. I'm working easing right now. So now we get this. Blink, blink. No. That doesn't work. It looks like he's a lizard or like a fish or something. It kind of looks a little bit more organic than the other one because we've got that lower lid in there now. But no. It's just wrong. Yeah, drunk. It's just like there's something wrong with this. You can almost expect like the lizard tongue to go and lick his eyeball like chameleons do and stuff like that. It's just like, yeah, he's become the lizard man. And then like the vertical blink where it like blinks this way instead of this way. It's just not right. So we're starting to get a lot of these different blinks. Yeah, Rango. Rango is a great example of they would create that offset blink because he is a lizard. He is a chameleon and his eyes will often point in different directions and blink at different times because he's a chameleon. So understanding your source material is a really good thing. Now, let's actually do another variation here. I'm just going to take this blink and I'm going to shrink the pupil size, or sorry, the iris size specifically. So let's say we have a character with a slightly smaller iris. So something like this. And I'm just going to copy that over. The reason I'm doing this is we might get a zombie blink right here. So right there, you're starting to get into a little bit of that zombie blink. See how we're just seeing like this ocean of white in the eye? If this eye control is a little higher, we'll get that very clearly right there. That's zombie eyes. See how, like, if you were to just scrub through your animation, oh, looks good, looks good, looks good. And then you get to that point, something's not right. That's kind of creepy looking. We don't want that. It's just not going to feel good. So be very conscious of that zombie eye syndrome. Okay, so that was a lot of the issues that we saw. Timing too fast and slow. Let's actually go back to our document here. So timing too fast and slow. We did both versions. Close timing is the same as the open timing. Yep, we ruined that. They only close for one frame. It just, you can see it like in the animation. They just kind of close, boonk, and it's almost like it bounces. It's just like boonk. That doesn't feel fleshy. It doesn't feel like they're closing. We're getting that compression, and then they open. Just boonk. Not good. So, offset blink, Pixar blink. Looks like a lizard. Not really what we want. The eyelids move up and down in perfect sync. They were perfectly mechanical. It doesn't feel organic. The eyelids start and stop too sharply. They literally just boonk, start, and then as soon as they get up, boonk, stop. Not interesting. Posing. We only used vertical motion, straight up and down. The lid's made in the middle. The bottom lid doesn't do much. The bottom lid doesn't move at all. It should move something. It shouldn't stay perfectly frozen. Leaving the eyes in the default T-pose, we didn't do any posing whatsoever. And you could see that there were gaps in the eyelids. His eyes weren't closing right. And that's normal. Most rigs will actually have some form of that. You need to pose out the eyes. There's no sympathetic motion. We were only animating the top and bottom eyelid control at most. The eye stays still during the blink. The eyeball wasn't moving. We got zombie eye syndrome, and we had no pupil dilation. We hit every single thing on this checklist. This is where I need a button to like shoot streamers and like little air horns or something like that. Yay! A little clapping. We did it. We hit every single blink issue on this list. Yeah, we're master animators now. Let's start actually understanding how not to do this. How to actually get a proper blink in there. So, to do this, let's actually open up a reference that I found right here. Ooh, kind of creepy. I feel sorry for people who just jump into the stream and see this staring back at them. We are judging you and we are watching you. Terrifying. So, we've got this blink here. And this should become the thumbnail. Yeah, if I need to put this as a thumbnail for the video of the highlight. This has to be just an eye staring back at you. So this is going to be just a quick reference of a blink. Now, I didn't just use this reference. We're going to be looking at this one for simplicity's sake. I downloaded multiple videos of blinks, and honestly, what did I do? I went to Google, blink videos. That's it. And I found a whole bunch of videos just of characters blinking. Yay. You can shoot your own. Just bring your camera really close to your eyes and blink. There you go. So let's take a look. Here's our blink. There we go. Now, there's a lot of things, and actually it's not playing. So let me refresh this. And doopy-doopy-doo. There we go. So we'll play it this way, since it didn't want to cooperate before. Okay, so let's hit play. There's our blink. Nope. Interesting. Let me refresh this. Refresh. There we go. Are you gonna blink for me now? There we go. Now it's creepier. Now it's alive and staring. So here's our blink. Now you'll notice there's a lot going on. So let's start breaking it down right through. I've already done some drawings on this because I just wanted to analyze it myself. So here we have all the timing. I'll go over this in just a little bit. This is my natural way of timing things out. So it looks like a mess at first. But let's just break this down. So here we have the actual start of the blink. And you'll notice I've started tracking the corners of the eye right here. Corners of the eye. I want to see how things will move. As the eye blinks, let's actually focus on the biggest thing first. Look at the point of the eye. Let's pick this point right here and pick a color that shows up pink. This point right here, and then this point right here. Look at the eyelashes. Now, as it blinks, notice something? They don't go down. They go diagonally. It goes down and at an angle. Now, when it blinks, watch this point right here. Again, right there. So we look at that point. As it goes up, it goes to the left and then back up. Eye blinks don't happen straight up and down. They happen at an angle and in an arc. When we talk about there's arcs everywhere, there's arcs everywhere. And I've got a happy song for this. So the eye arc is actually going whoop, like that. It goes in at an angle, around, and then up, like so. So they go down diagonally inwards. They go down inwards and then out, or up outwards. So in, then out. So there's an arc to that. That's very important. If we look at the bottom lid, look at the eyelashes here. Notice something? It doesn't go up. It gets pulled in this way towards the corner of the eye. The lower lid is actually nudging over to the side and up at a slight angle, because the way the muscles attach, they're over here. They attach to the corner of the eye. So when the muscles contract, they pinch in towards the center. So everything goes whoop, whoop, out. It's not up and down. So already, I'm seeing a big mistake that we've done in our eye blinks. We're just animating them completely wrong. Now, honestly, when you're doing a cartoony blink, do you have to do all this anatomical detail? No, it's not necessary. But it gives us something to strive for and to push and add extra detail in there. Okay, what else can we see? Well, let's look at just the timing. We've got our start frame here, 164. The eye close happens here, 168. So that's the close. It closes for 2 frames. Look at the eyelashes. See how we can see the motion blur here? The motion blur stops right there. No motion blur. Motion blur. It's starting to move again. 2 frame hold. Eyes hold for at least 2 frames, sometimes more. Now you can get away with the 1 frame, but usually it's like 2 frames. And you can see, look at the compression happening. Close, and you see the whole eyelid kind of pressing down a little bit more, beep, before it starts to open up again. Then it opens up, and where does it stop? Well, let's look at our frame numbers. It's closed on 169 right here. So frame 169 closed, and then it opens and stops moving. Like, look at the top lid. Stops moving almost here. It's still moving ever so slightly up to here, 204. The eye took from 169 to 204 before it fully stopped moving. That's a long time to keep moving. That's 169, so 31, and then 35 frames of motion of just the eye opening. Not 3, not even the 10 that we did afterwards. 35 frames. Now, do we have to do 35 frames every time? That's a long blink. Not really. The big thing is this whole section right here. You can see, like, when I scrub through at speed, you can actually see that motion right there. How much is moving. It's very slight. And we're like super zoomed into the eye. Essentially what's happening is as the eye lid goes up to the top, it's on a round surface. It's on an eyeball. And it's just skin. So as it's settling, it's just kind of sliding on the eye as the eye is relaxed. That's it. So when we're animating the eye, as long as we get a really nice, strong ease out, or sorry, a strong ease into the motion, we can make something feel natural. It doesn't just go, stop. Long ease. And you'll notice that the actual, like, from close, 169, once again, to when it's pretty much open and like most of the motion stops, it's like 184. So about 15 frames. That's not too long. 15 frames for most of the motion, and then another 20 frames of ease. So a big difference, and a big difference from the closing to the opening. You can see that the opening took way more time. This is not always the case, but in this case, that's what we're seeing. Okay, what else can we look at? Well, since we're here, look at the pupil. Look how wide the pupil is right here, and then how it narrows down. See how it shrinks and then grows again. When you open your eye, your pupil, the black of your eye, has an overshoot. It's going to be dilated. You can see this is where it's blown. The pupil is blown out, dilated, open. As the light hits it, it shrinks down. You can see here, if I play it at speed, you can really see how fast they go, shrink. They narrow down, and then they grow again. They overshoot, and then back down, and back to a kind of settled pose. So our pupils have a lot of motion to them. It's super subtle, but it's in there. What else can we look at? Well, let's look at the eyeball. So look at the line right here of the eye as the eye closes. See how the eye moves up right here to right there. It moves up slightly. As we open our eye, as we blink, our eye rolls up in our head, and then here, watch that line, it comes down. So our eye rolls up when we blink. We can try to put this into our animation. The problem is this will lead to zombie eye syndrome. So normally we cheat that and actually go down. We do the inverse. It still looks more natural than if the eye just stays still. What else are we seeing? Well, let's look at the sympathetic action. We looked at the blink, how it's moving diagonally, but look at the skin over the eye right here. It moves down too. That fold of skin, this is not the eyelid right here. It's the fold of skin over the eyelid. It moves down with the eyelid and also moves in an arc. It goes out that way with the eye. Whoop. And then back. And you can see it fold back in. It's just skin. It's folding. So we've got that connection right there. If we look at the lower lid, you can see the motion happening down here in the lower part of the cheek. You can see it all get pulled in right there. That's not the eyelid. That's the skin below the eye. And then it also comes back. We've got that sympathetic motion across the whole thing. Over the eye, under the eye. We also have some sympathetic motion in the brow right here. You can see it get pulled right there on the outer edges because the skin over here is getting pulled and it's pulling the brow down just a little bit. It's very slight, but it's in there. You can see the hairs of the eyebrow just adjusting ever so slightly. So we've got a lot of details here that are happening in a blink that we did not even come close to incorporating in our animation. And this is not going into eye darts, and that's a whole other discussion. This is just the blink. So let's play this at normal speed here. And boop, you can see there's a blink. Blink. There we go. Now, this video is playing at 30 frames per second. So it is not 24. So that timing I was talking about of like the blink took 35 seconds. That's at 30 frames per second. We would need to calculate how that's going to play at now 24 frames per second. So this goes to my timing that I was talking about earlier. Let's look at this. It's not going to make a huge amount of sense, but essentially what I do, this is whenever I'm timing reference for anything, I will time it out at the base reference. So 30 frames per second in this case. So we have the eye closes or starts to close at 164. It closed at 168, stayed closed at 169, mostly open 184, finished at 204. So that's a difference of 4 frames between start and closed, 1 frame, 15 frames, 20 frames. I've got it all timed out right there, but that's at 30 frames per second. From there, I just calculate how long that will be at 24 frames per second. So at 24 frames, 4 frames becomes 3, 15 becomes 12, 20 becomes 16. You can do this mathematically. You can do this by kind of just averaging. Honestly, it doesn't really matter as long as you kind of get it on average. If you want to do it mathematically, from 30 frames to 24 frames, you just have to multiply this number by 0.8. So for example, 20 is going to be 20 times 0.8, and that's going to be 16 frames. So if you figure out the ratio, it doesn't take long to retime things. This was just me retiming or figuring out the timing for the pupils. So the pupils are blown out at 174, they narrow down at 198, and they settle at 206. Here's our timing at 24 frames per second. From there, I time it all out as if I was doing it on a timeline. So we have our start of the animation, frame 1. Eye is closed on frame 4, closed on frame 5. The pupil gets blown out on frame 9. The eye is mostly open on 17. Final open on frame 33. There is our time for the blink. Now, this is the way I time things out. Honestly, you could bring the reference into Maya, follow along with that. You can do whatever it is that works well for you. For me, the reason I do it this way is because I can take a whole bunch of references, which is what I'll usually do, and find kind of the averages of all of them and then make my own timing based on that. This way I'm not just copying one reference. I'm trying to understand how do eyes in this case move on average across multiple things. And this will give me kind of a base vanilla blink that I can use to throw into my shots and then vary up from there. So we looked at our reference, we found all of this cool stuff. Let me just move this over to the side here, and let's jump back into our shot. Now, when we look at these blinks, we can really see how these are not working. They really are not working. So let's create a proper blink. So let's start, let's say frame. Let's actually just put this at the beginning. I'm going to move the other blinks over to the end here. Bip. And let's reset the iris here. Okay. So we've got frame 1. It's going to be opened like this, and then it's going to be done on frame 34. So there's my global timing of my blink. Frame 1 to frame 34. Now, how do we start blocking this in? Well, just like with any blocking, you want to start with a good solid pose. One of the big checklist items that we had was that we did not pose the eyelids. You need to pose the eyelids. If you don't, you're not going to be able to get a good blink. So, how do eyelids get posed here? Well, usually the eyelid tends to have a peak where the lens of the eye is. The eye kind of bulges right where the pupil is right here. There's a little bump right there. It's what lets light bend into the eye. So there's going to be a little bit of a bulge there. As an exaggeration, you're going to get something more like this. See how the eyelid, the peak right there, is a little bit more pushed right over the pupil? That's going to be a little bit more natural than this, where, let's exaggerate, where the peak is over at the side, because the lens should be pushing on the eyelid right there. So let's do a quick pose. I'm just going to drag that over, maybe rotate a little bit right here. And for this, just for the sake of speed, I'm going to focus on one eye. So we're just going to do one blink, and then I can adjust it later. And yes, A to the J, that bump is the cornea bulge. So it's the cornea, the lens of the eye has that extra bulge there. Now, how else can we improve our eyelid shape? I'm just going to bring in my drawing pencil here. So let me layer managers. That's what I want. Nope. And for some reason, my license didn't get renewed. Let me bring that in. Okay. So the reason I'm going to do this is I want to just do some quick draw overs for you. Once I get my license in there, there we go. Okay, so let's also save. So we've got the eyelid affected by the cornea bulge right here. It's going up on this side, right there. Now what we don't usually want is the cornea bulge to also be affecting the lower lid at the same place. Well, that creates kind of this straight line through the eye. It's just not super interesting. Instead, well, actually, let's just show that. So if I do this bulge right here, see how the peak of the eye here and here are kind of right above each other, and it just creates a straight line. It's boring. Angles usually are more interesting. So if I bring this over to the side a little bit, hey, and Tara, thank you so much for the sub. Aw, thank you. And thanks for the reminder. Actually, I haven't had anything to drink today. That actually feels better. So by moving that over to the side, now we have the bulge happening up here, and then kind of a little bit of a sag happening here. This creates an angle to the eye. It's more appealing, more interesting. So very basically, we can pose out the eye like this. And new mic? No, This is the mic I usually use. I just usually have it way down here, but I've been told that the sound is so much better when I bring it up closer, so I figured I'd give it a try. And if people prefer the sound like this, let me know. If you prefer it further down, also let me know. I will say definitely when it's up here, I tend to get like, I move my hands a lot and I'm always afraid of punching it. So let's take this eyelid here and just maybe add a little rotation to it. The eye corners can also be adjusted. So for example, if a character is smiling, this corner is going to be higher. If they're sad, it's going to be lower. In this case, we're just going to leave it at a neutral. We're not going to go too far on posing. But you want to pose the eyelid based on what the character is feeling. So already we've got an eye pose here. And I think I've got one key extra there. So let's just compare. See that? It's not a huge difference, but suddenly this eye seems more active. It seems more alive than this one where the skin just doesn't feel like it's affected by the eye itself. Okay, so let's copy that over to our frame. Now we've got our start and our end. Let's block in the eye. Very basic blocking. Let's go to the closed frame. Frame 5. This is where having all of your timing written out, if you plan things out, it's so much easier. I'm not going through and what frame do I have to go on? Where does this close? Maybe here, maybe there. No. Frame 5, closed. Set a key. There we go. Let's close the eye. Now, we learned some cool things. The eye does not do this. It does not go straight down. It goes down and in. So I'm going to pull this over and in. And it's not going to be a huge difference, but it's essentially that line weight right there. See how we can pull it over just a little bit. If your rig doesn't have the ability to move the eyelids side to side like that, usually you're going to have the fine tune controls right here, and you could use those to do the same thing. So this is going to come down. It doesn't go down all the way, all on its own. So let's get like right around here, maybe something like that. The lower lid doesn't just go straight up. It honestly goes in more than it goes up. So now we've got that. And see how the eye is closing correctly now? Because we shaped things. Now, if you really want to, you can pose it to camera, or you can actually pose it here and really make sure the eye is nice and closed right there. Okay. So we've got that close right here. Frame 5. There we go. Now, frame 6. This is going to be the second close frame. We're just doing a quick block out right now. I'm going to add in all the secondary stuff afterwards. So quick block out. Let's actually just take a quick look at our reference. See what we had. So if you look at the closed frame, we have the first frame here, second frame. The eyes are starting to change direction. This is the ease. They've moved in at an angle. Now they're easing back before they change direction and do that big arc. So let's do that here. We've got that big arc sideways of the eyelid. Now here it's going to press down and change direction like that. And we might even just push a little bit of that rotation in there. And I'm going to try to exaggerate things a little bit just for the sake of clarity. The bottom lid is going to go off to the side here. So it's changing direction as well. Easing. But it's going to be pushed down slightly because the top eyelid is actually pushing it. So if we look at the controls, you can see we've got quite a bit of a difference here compared to what we had before. This rig is the Darius rig, which is the new Animation Mentor rig. He's really fun to work with. He actually just got released last week. And yeah, he's really cool. So we've got the basics of the blink. Haha, we're done. But if we go through here, it still doesn't look great. The opening of the eye is super slow, and there's still elements that are not working. But definitely, even with just that, there's something more alive with the way the blink is working. The timing is proper, and we are starting to get that more organic, like side to side motion. So let's keep blocking out the eyelid itself. There's another pose that's very important that we need to hit, which is the almost open pose. Right now, the eye is going from frame 6 and taking all the way to frame 34 before it's fully open. But really, what's going to happen is from frame 6, the eye is going to be pretty much almost open by frame 17. See how right now it's not even like halfway open? This needs to be like 95% of the way there. So I'm going to bring this back. And what I can do is I'm just going to copy the frame 34 to frame 17. So I go to frame 34, middle mouse drag to frame 17, set a key. That copies it. Now there's no motion. I'm just going to bring it down slightly and maybe out a little bit just to kind of give a little bit more of an arc right there. So let's do something like that. Now 17 to 34, we have just that. And as the eye opens, whoop, like doesn't that feel much better? See how fleshy that looks already? Blink. And then it shrinks there. I need another key. Let's do that and then shrink our time there. So let's take a look at that. There we go. And oops, I need to get the pupil. I've got that extra key later on. There we go. That fixed it. So there we go. We don't get that weird iris motion. So just there, we've got a much more accurate blink. That feels way better. And we haven't even done the polish and anything else. We haven't touched the eyeball itself, the iris, the pupil, nothing. We even haven't touched the spacing. This is just the key poses. That's it. Now, the bottom lid, we do have to make sure that we set a key on here. So on frame 17, the bottom lid is also going to be pretty much in the final pose. Let's have it settle a little bit, but a little less. Bottom lid doesn't move as much. So you can see there's just the tiniest hint of motion right there. Okay. So what else can we push in here? Well, let's start pushing the spacing. Before we start touching anything else, let's get the spacing feeling right. Because one thing that happens with the blink is see how the top lid just shoots down. Pop right there. Let's look at our reference. Does that happen? And when you're doing these types of analyses, and there we go. Now it's falling. When you're doing these types of analyses, it's okay to jump back and forth. Look at your reference, go, okay, what am I seeing here? How can I incorporate that? What we're seeing here is, as that blink starts to happen, look at the top lid. It doesn't pop. It eases, like a barely motion, and then pops down, and then snaps shut right there. As it comes up, it eases out, and then moves quickly right in the middle here. So let's do that with our eye right here. So this is where the graph editor starts to come in really handy. I'm just going to dock it. Let's do that. So let's focus on translate Y first. This is going to be the most important. As the eye comes down, I don't want this to pop down. So I'm just going to set another key here and bring this up. And I just want like a hint of motion right there. Yeah, maybe even a little less. It just starts to move. Graph editor is great for this. There we go. So we get hint of motion. As it comes down, before it contacts, we notice that it eased in slightly. Honestly, this depends on what kind of blink you want to do. If you're doing a really harsh, like blink, like really sharp, don't ease that in. Bring this up, and now the eye, boom, it really hits hard. If I want more of a natural blink, kind of a relaxed blink, this is going to ease in just a little bit right there. So now we get that kind of softer feeling to the eye, just a little bit right there. And then I can adjust my spacing in the middle. There we go. Let's also look at my translate X, in this case, side to side. So the eye starts to go to the side here. Let's ease that out as well, just a little bit. Just a little. And then as it comes down, let's ease that in a little bit more. So it really eases into that corner there. So something like that. Then it changes direction there, eases out. As it comes up, we can push the spacing here as well. So let's just put a key in the middle. Because we've got so much time right here, I'm just going to put a key right in the center and kind of favor the up pose right there. And maybe out just a little bit more so we really push that arc. Boonk. There we go. Let's look at our translate X. A little too much right here. Let's bring it back. Something like that. Ease this out just a little bit more. Something like this. Okay. Now, we've got that motion of the upper eyelid. Pretty much done. And let's actually, I do have some rotate Z on there. Let's make sure I'm not doing some weird stuff there. So there's kind of this big shift right here. This is okay because it's on the close and there's pressure going in there. So that's fine. But maybe as it's opening here, I'll try to push this a little bit more so that the eye starts to open where the cornea bulge is. So we get something a little bit more like this. There we go. Let's do the same with the bottom lid. So bottom lid, one thing we noticed in the reference is that there's a lot more translate X side to side at the beginning than up and down. So what I want to really feel here is my translate Y should essentially, let's put a key right in the center here, ease out a huge amount here. Big ease. Right there. And instead, we start to feel that sideways motion happening just a little bit more. So it's moving sideways and then up. Then it gets pushed down. And then let's ease this in even more. Right through here. Same thing here. Take that, ease in just a little bit more. So if we watch that arc of that control, it's going across, kind of downwards there. Hits. Now it's arcing up this way. And then back down. So we've got this little loop right in the eyelid right there. Top lid, same thing. Let's look at that arc. It goes over, down, and around. And we could probably push this even more right here, honestly. Like I could have an overshoot happen right through here. If I really wanted to exaggerate. I think, yeah, we'll go with that for now. So there we go. There's the blink with just the eyelid controls. You can see that feels really organic all of a sudden. Now, did we have any secret formula? Did we use the secret animation tool? No, we just looked at reference and figured out how a blink actually works. And this goes for anything. Now, you don't use the shark fin approach. You can use the shark fin approach. So the shark fin approach, for anyone who doesn't know, is when you're creating a blink, you can take your translate Y and you want it to look like a shark fin. So essentially, the curve would be something like this and then like that, or reversed. So you've got one side that eases a little bit more, one side's a little faster. That's the shark fin approach. Well, if you take a look at this, that's really what I have. Fast and slow. That's my upside down shark fin right there. It's just the shark fin approach is taking into account what we just looked at and boiling it down to a simple kind of rule of thumb. But really it's that ease, and then if I wanted to, if I did this would give me that true shark fin where the eye snaps shut. I want a little bit more ease. This is me just going, this is what I want for this eye blink. So from there, let's get the other controls in here. So let's get the eye in, because the eye is going to be the biggest one that's going to affect this blink. And I feel like the bottom lid is easing a little too much here. So I might push this just a little bit more. I think right here, this needs to be lower. Too low. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so let's get the eye in there. So for the eye, how can we pose this? Well, it really is up to us how we do this. I can have this closed and I could animate it in a natural way. What I mean by natural is that as the eye closes, the eyeball will go up right here. And let's actually just do this with the global control. Actually I'll do it with the individual control for now. So now as the eye closes, you see how the eyeball goes up. This is the natural way of doing this. Is that wrong? Nope. If you want to do it this way, you can do it this way. Or if you want to do it the other way, which is the animation approach, we bring it down. Now as the eye closes, the iris and pupil go down. Again, this is to avoid zombie eye syndrome. If my eye was posed like this, where you just see pure white, no, we would want to bring the pupil down. In this case, because the pupil is, or the iris, I should say, is large enough, I could animate this naturally. So I'm going to maybe bring this up right here. So we get a slight upwards motion. But right now it's looking too tied into the lower lid. It feels like it's perfectly connected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delay it. At the beginning, it's barely going to move. So a little bit of motion so it doesn't feel frozen. But now we feel the lower lid moving, and then it starts to affect the eye. Maybe just one frame there. So now we get something like that. Very slight. And honestly, I could tone this down even more. We don't want too much, or else that character will look like their eye is just kind of bouncing around a little too much. It stays closed, so let's bring that up just a little bit more. So it's still going down, or sorry, the eye is going down as the eye is going up as the blink is going down. That's the words I'm looking for. And then it settles back, and the eye is going to settle pretty quick. So let's get this back to where it should be. And set a key. Boop. Okay. So as the eye opens, we get a little bit of a downwards motion in there. And once again, add a breakdown just to get a little bit more ease in there. Very slight. We could exaggerate a little bit more if we feel like it, but honestly, I don't want to see this motion. I want to feel it. We can also add a little side-to-side motion. If everything is being pulled inwards, well, most likely the eye is going to be pulled in as well. So I'm going to pull this in just a little bit. Just a hint. This is something that you don't really see in the reference, but I'm just creating this interpolation of, I want that feeling of connectedness in there. I don't want it to feel like 100% glued, but it should have a little bit of pull in there. Okay. Then as it comes back, let's settle it in there. Okay. So something like that. Very subtle. Now, scale of the iris or the pupil. If you're talking about like what do we need to animate for the like dilation, it'll be the pupil. The iris in real life does not change size. You cannot change the size of the iris and shrink it down. It's just the pupil that squashes and stretches. In animation, we can exaggerate that. If we want a character to look really angry, we shrink that down. We really just like go all out. If we want a character to feel cute, we can blow that out and just, that kind of looks a little too creepy there. There we go. We want to see a little bit of white there. So we can do whatever we want. In terms of the animation of the eye to make it natural, it's only going to be the pupil. So let's take the pupil control here and let's look at our timing. So looking at my notes here, the pupil is going to be blown out on frame 9 right here. So we're just starting to see the edge of the pupil. Let's make it a little bit bigger here. And I'm going to go quite large there. Then by frame 28, the pupil will be narrower than it should be. And then frame 34 is going to be final. And actually, that makes me realize my timing here is a little off. All of the eye should happen by frame 33, and then the pupil is one frame later. Right there. Okay. So, honestly, it's not going to make a huge difference. It just creates a nice little offset. So, we've got the dilation coming down, but then right here, the pupil needs to shrink. Because basically it's being hit by a bunch of light, so the pupil will shrink and then go back to its default here. So we have this motion now. Shrink, grow. Now, does that look good? Not really. Why? Well, a few different reasons. One, I'm dilating the pupil as it opens. It needs to be dilated before it gets to opening right here. So something like this. So now it's dilated and then it starts to narrow down right through here. And I've got this extra key in here, which is not helping. So, whoop, there. Now it's going too far, a little too narrow right there. So let's make that less so we don't have too much of a difference here, and a little too dilated here. We don't want to really see it. We want to feel it. Now, let's just push our spacing because our spacing is not the most interesting right now. So I'm going to ease that in there. This is the overshoot. And then let's ease this in just a little bit more at the end. Something more like this. There we go. So let's just hit play and see what we've got. Not bad. It's a little too much, but honestly, from a distance, like you can see here, you're not going to see it. So this is where you have to think of how far is the camera going to be. Let's kind of hide that other eye. Like, do you notice it? Not really. It's very slightly there. So it's actually not bad from this distance. From the close-up, a little too much. We're starting to see it more than we feel it. I also feel like I need to ease it in just a little bit more here. 34, 28. Yeah. Okay. So ease in. I think I could maybe add another frame right here as well. Push it a little bit from what we saw in the reference. So there we go. Now I've got the eye and the pupil. Now I feel like I could maybe push the eye motion just a little bit more. If my pupil is moving this much, we can really push the eye. So let's take our translates here. Just scale this whole thing up. And then same thing with the translate X. There we go. Feel it a little bit more. And maybe we'll ease out that motion just a little bit more too. Okay. There we go. So we've got the eye in place now. Now, I think I've probably scaled it up a little too much, so I'm just going to nudge that back. Yeah, something like that. So, from here, what's next? There we go. Get that ease working right there. Okay. So, we've got the lids pretty much done. We've got the eye pretty much done. At this point, we need the connection around the eye. So this is the skin all around. And every rig is a little different. Some rigs don't even have these controls. But we have like this skin under here that we can use. We've got this one over here that we can play around with. We've also got a little bit of eyelid control if we wanted to do this, which we already did with the main eyelid. Now, there is actually another thing that we need to pay attention to, which is the corner of the eyes. So if we actually look at the corner of the eye, so the outer corner right here and the inner corner, you'll notice that those tend to move too. The outer corner pulls in slightly. The inner corner, this is where everything pins to, so it doesn't really move that much. It moves a little bit in, but not too bad. So the outer corner goes in and down, and then out and up. Same arc. So let's add that in there, super subtly. Take that outer corner of the eye right here. And let's add that in. So as it comes in, the inner corner is going to go in and down. Then it's going to start arcing down and around. And then we reset back here. So just get that motion in there most of the way by frame 16. I believe that was the timing I had. Let me double check my notes. This is where having your notes is super helpful because it's actually frame 17. Okay. Four is good. Okay. Let's copy my pose. Good. And ease this in. Okay, there we go. So we're just trying to get that nice arcing motion through here. And it goes down and around. Like that. And I need one breakdown right here. It's moving too much to the side too quickly. So let's do something like that. There we go. So we get that extra little subtle motion in the eyelid, or it's the eye corner. So we've got that. I feel like the eye, just kind of looking at it, see how the eye feels kind of connected to the lower lid right here? I'm moving it too much. So I'm going to tone down my eye motion right there. This is something I always look for in my shots, is anything that feels like too connected. You don't want them to feel disconnected, but you want to feel like something leads the action and that they're not like connected by invisible strings. Okay. So we've got all of that. Good. Let's get the extra connection in there. Now, to get the extra connection in the skin, we just have to choose which control we're going to use. I could use the control in the corner here or the one down here. Which one? I think this corner control is going to be a little bit more what I'm looking for. And it follows the lower eyelid. So I could animate it myself, or I could copy my animation from the lower eyelid. So I'm going to copy my animation right here. This is just that first section of animation. Edit, copy. Go to my lower lid there. This is Translate X. I'm going to go to Edit, Paste, and let's do a... Let's see. How do I want to paste it? I want to merge it with the original. If I just insert it, it's going to push my timing. So I'm going to merge it with the original. And I'm just going to copy it right at my current timing. Boop. There we go. So that now replaced my animation of the lower lid. Let's bring it back up because you can see how it's stretched that. So back up. And then now we get this. Ugh, what's going on? Well, it just needs to be scaled down. So I'm going to take my animation here, just scale it down a tiny bit, zoom in. And this is very subtle. I just want a little bit of motion here, where as he blinks, you feel that connection. And this is still too much. So scale it down. Right in there. Now it also needs to move up. So let's do that. Copy the translate Y of the lower lid there. Copy. Take that control, translate Y, and edit, paste. And I just want to see if I insert it. Connect. Yeah, that's not what I want. I want to merge it. Actually, yeah, let's just do it that way. Oop. And make sure my timing is correct. So go back to frame 1. Paste. There we go. Ooh, what happened? Well, essentially, again, it needs to be scaled down and readjusted. So let's fix this. Take all those keys, move them up. There we go. So with this, I'll go to my most extreme pose right here, take my keys, and I like to use this button right here. This is the region tool. It basically allows you to scale and scale from like one point. You can see how as I'm bringing it down, it's scaling towards the bottom keys there. This makes it very easy to make sure that those don't move, and I get that nice connected feeling. So right in there. Now we have that control, go up and then down. Right in there. Maybe just a little bit more. Like so. Now I can take those and offset them. Let's do 1 frame for now. Oop, 1 frame. There we go. Now the eyelid will start, and then the skin underneath adjusts after. Okay. Now if we want to, we can scale that up, but for now, that's okay. Let's do that same thing with the skin over the eye. Now, which control am I going to need to use here? I'm probably going to use this one. Maybe a mixture of this one. We'll see. Every rig is different, so you have to look through and see how each control is going to work. I could actually probably do all 3 of them together and then offset them. Let's see. Trying to think which is going to be the easiest way to do it. Yeah, I'll do 1 and then I'll copy it to the other 2. So same thing. We want to get that connected feeling from the eyelid to the skin above the eye, because that should move. It should be part of this whole action. So I'm going to copy my animation right here, edit, copy, and then let's go to, we'll start with the outer control. Just randomly. And let's copy this in a different way. I'm going to select this. I deleted all my other keys because honestly, I don't really need them. And then I'm going to go to paste, and I'm going to go to insert and connect. What that does is it'll paste the keys, but you'll notice that I don't have to retime them up, or not retime, readjust them up or down. They're just in the pose right there, right from the start. Now, as it goes down, whoa, too much. Once again, scale your keys. This is the fun part about facial animation, is you're going to copy keys from one thing to another, and you're going to get some funky results. Especially like copying from the jaw to the nose. The nose is just going to blow apart. And yes, you can do this all in Blender. I'm using Maya. That's the industry standard for most animation, but all of this can be done in Blender. Blender is really good. I actually haven't used it all that much, but it is still a really cool program. So, and there's a question here. If you notice the curves are very similar to the ones you already created, you can save time and reuse from other controllers you animated. Yeah. So this is where you want to animate smart and think of how things are connected. That eyelid, that skin above the eyelid right here, it's connected to the actual eyelid moving up and down. I could animate it all manually, or just use something that was already has that motion and copy it. So I'm trying to be smart about this. I want to save myself time. So I'm going to copy the side to side from that eyelid right here. Take this, translate X. I'm going to just delete all my extra keys. Select that last one, or sorry, technically the first one. Paste. There we go. Now, once again, the eye is going to blow apart. And this one, since our curve is going up and down, I can't really just scale it using the region tool. So I'm just going to scale it using the R key. So I hit R on the keyboard, and then I'm going to middle mouse drag from the 0 point right here. And I don't want lots of motion, just a little bit. Because the skin up there is not going to have as much side to side as the actual eyelid itself. But see how suddenly that feels really connected? It's suddenly much more interesting to look at. Now, I think I offset the time. No, that's good. Did I? I think I might have offset the timing by accident. Yeah, I did. So, honestly, I could keep it like that because I will be offsetting the timing later. But I do want to keep things kind of in line for now, so that I am not like fighting with my timing and trying to figure out like what went wrong later. So all of this needs to be retimed. Boop, 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 right there. There we go. Now, let's take all of this and copy it over onto the other eye. The skin right there. So let's take this control right here. I'm going to take my translate X, take that, copy, take it onto this one, translate X, get rid of the other keys, paste. And let's actually use the paste options to make sure I get everything exactly right. So edit, paste. There we go. And then same thing here, take this one. Once you do one, the others are pretty quick right there. Okay, so take the translate Y now, copy. I could do both of them if I wanted to. Sync, selection graph editor. Okay, delete that, paste, and I think that should have done both of them. Let's see. Yep, there we go. So now that whole upper skin works. Done. Or I can polish it even more. So I can, for example, let's take my translate Y, offset that maybe 2 frames, or 1 frame for the translate Y, and then let's do 2 for the translate X. Just see how that feels. There you go. Maybe a little too much there. Now it's starting to get that nice connected feeling in there. Now it's a little too disconnected, especially the translate Y. So I'm going to bring that back in like so. And then I can even go further, and I want the translate Y on this eye control to be less. So essentially, I want the outer corner to move a little bit more than the inner corners, just for the sake of it. So I'm going to bring this there, and then this one even less. So now we feel that outer corner doing a little bit more of the work. Something like that. Let's see. Also, one trick, if you go to the frame where your translate Y is at its fastest and move your translate, I'm assuming translate X to cross, you'll get arcs. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. So with that, whoop, it opens and closes. We've got that nice connection. Now I do notice there's a few questions there. I will get back to them. I just want to finish this up while I'm thinking about it. And you can see, like, just look at the controls here, how that suddenly feels way more organic as the eye is blinking. I could even connect this one in a little bit if I wanted to. Essentially copy the controls from here. So let's take this. 34, that's the last one. So delete those. I'm going to copy translate Y onto this one. Translate Y. And make sure I actually go to the right time here. Always make sure that when you're copying and pasting, you actually go to the start frame. It makes it a lot easier. And translate X, same thing. So now that outer edge of the eye moves as well, but I'm going to tone this down quite a bit because that outer edge doesn't move as much as the inner edge right there. There's bone right here, your cheekbone. So I want to make sure I feel it in the inner portion of the lower eye versus the outer portion. Right there. Let's offset this. One frame. There we go. Now we've got this nice organic motion to the whole eye right there. There's one last thing we need to do, which is we need to connect the brow just a little bit. We can connect the whole brow, or in this case, it's mostly the outer edge. That's the part that moves the most with a blink. The inner edge right here is attached closer to like the bony structure of that, like that brow and nose. So we don't really need to worry about that too much. But I do want to have a tiny connection right in there. So same thing. We can take the animation we've already done, copy that. Let's paste it here. It's going to be too much at the beginning here. So let's take that and then just tone it back. So it is a micro motion. Tone it down even more here. The brow, I really don't want to do too much, because if I had an expression on top of this, I would have to fight a lot of stuff. So right there, and let's also take our translate X because it adds nice arcs to things. It's not, again, not that straight up and down. So we'll take that, copy this, and yeah, copy all of that, edit, copy, paste it onto this, and then get ready for explosion. Actually, that's surprisingly not too bad. Whoa. But let's scale it down anyway. It's always nice when you expect something to blow up and it's like, oh, not bad. There we go. But I do want a little bit more of a delay on this. So let's try offsetting, just for the sake of argument, 2 frames. There we go. So we get that little bit of a delay where we feel the eyelids lead that action just a little bit more. And we get that nice offset right in there. Now I could copy that into the inner brow and like super tone it down. But honestly, at this point, I think we're pretty much good. So we've got the blink, but you'll notice that we did all of that work and we've only got the blink on one side, which not great. So what do we do? Well, there's a few different things you can do. Let's save first because we don't want to crash and lose all of this. So I could reanimate everything on the other side, but that's going to take a lot of time. It would be nice if I could just take this animation and copy it over, mirror it onto the other side. Well, if you have Studio Library, which is basically a plugin, it's totally free. It allows you to create character poses. So these are all poses I've made for students at Animation Mentor. If you want to create a quick hand pose, boop, just put it in there. And it lets you build off of something instead of having to create everything by default by yourself. This is my favorite one. I don't know why. It's really cool. But another thing you can do is you can create a mirror element. So essentially you take all of your controls, select all of them, and right click in here, create a new mirror table. And what I want here is I've already set this up. I'm going to take all my eye controls here. Let's select all of them. And I want to mirror from, in this case, right to left. So it's his right to his left, I believe. That's how it's going to work. So let's actually go to the blink where his eyes are closed. And what this should do is allow me to mirror my animation. So let's see if it's going to work. And I want the selected range. So I'm going to select from frame 1 all the way to frame 50. And once again, I want to do from his right to his left. Oh, didn't want to work. Let's see. Try again. There we go. Now did it do the whole thing? We got the one frame. So let's select the range again. So 1 to 50. Apply. There you go. Done. Now I've done the whole blink, both eyes perfectly polished, but not actually perfectly. The big reason? We are still running into one of the key issues that we had talked about in that checklist, where both eyes are moving perfectly in sync here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the other eye right there, and I'm going to offset some of its spacing. So as it's closing, maybe this eye is just going to close a little faster than the other. So we get that little offset. See how it's slightly more closed now? Just a little bit. Then we get that blink. It closes. I'll need to push the lower lid a little bit more, so it doesn't cut through. But we get that. Let's clean this up here just a tad. And then as it comes up, maybe this eyelid is just going to take a little bit more time to open up. So I'm just going to take my breakdown right here, bring it down, and now we get something like that. That's a little too much. So this is the next thing you tend to want to avoid. See how one eyelid is curved up, the other is curved down? This makes a character look like they're drunk. So you don't want to offset it to that point. I want to offset it just to the point where there's an offset, but it doesn't feel weird. So be very careful with your breakdowns right there. But now it's ever so slightly off, and we got our blink. There we go. So with that, our blink is complete. We've got a full blink. And if I wanted to, using Studio Library, I could take all my eye controls. Make sure you kind of refine this here a little bit, so you only have your eye controls. And I could save this as a blink animation. So I would go in here with all my controls selected, new animation. I would call this blink, set my range just to frame 150, or actually 1 to 34 is the full range. And I could save this. And now whenever I need another blink in my shot, book, put it in, I've got a blink. So you can make a whole different variety of blinks that are super polished like this. And then whenever you need a blink, just boop, 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 done, and make small tweaks. And you've got blinks everywhere. I'm not going to do that right here. So I'm going to save again now that I've got the other eye done. And let's actually compare our eye animation. See, is saving for this character work for another character with Studio Library? Only if their rig is named similarly. In most cases, it won't. So if you do it for one rig, it's only going to be for that rig. The only time it will work is if the rigs are almost identical. So like a reskin of a character or something like that. So let's take a look at our blinks here. And I'm just going to zoom out. And let's play through what we've got. So when we started with the typical issues that we see in a blink. We've got the just super quick, bland blink right here, where it's just like, boonk, done. Not interesting at all. There's no offset. Like, it's just straight, bland, boring. We've got the lizard Pixar blink that's way too slow. Things are too even. Like, again, that checklist that we were talking about before. Let me find it for you once more. Right there, that checklist. These two blinks that we just looked at hit all of these things that you want to avoid. You don't want this kind of stuff. This is going to make your blinks look bad. It's going to make your blinks not interesting. So try to avoid everything on this list. So these two blinks, like I said, we have that horrible, all those issues. Then we went in and we animated a proper blink. And now we have this. And you can see how that feels much more organic. Let's actually do a play blast here, just so we can actually see it at full speed. And it's going to be pretty quick because it is just literally a blink. But we're going to do it anyway. And I'm going to add some frames, some negative frames here. Just so we have some hold at the beginning. And let's do the whole range here. I have to reset all my play blast settings since I reset my preferences in Maya. So let's do 1280 by 720. And I'm going to save to a file. Let's save it on my desktop. Blink. Play blast. Okay. So with this play blasting, let's catch up here. Imagine you want to have the eye changing direction when blinking. Do you add this in a separate layer or just tweak what you already have? I would just tweak what I already have, honestly, because I didn't do much motion on the actual eye control. It won't make much of a difference. I would honestly, if I was using blinks in this way where I was saving them to a studio library, I would add them in onto an animation layer. That way I don't have to fight to like make sure I don't overlap some things. And then all of the eye motions will just kind of be inherited on top of it. So it's just an override layer on top, which can work really well. So let's look at the first blinks at speed. So we have boonk, boonk. They don't look good. Like that first one, see how fast it feels? Just dunk dunk. Let's actually set our range here. Range start. Range end is going to be here. It's horrible. But it's just, what's making it horrible is the fact that you can't register that the blink happens. It's too fast. That first blink is, we can't see anything. It's 3 frames down, 3 frames up, and 1 frame of contact you don't even register that it's a blink. It just kind of happens. The next blink definitely has more time. But now we get that kind of slow lizard blink. Doesn't feel very organic. Well, it kind of feels organic, but in a weird way, like that lizard way. It also has that offset, which makes him feel like he's kind of hit in the head. And we're still not getting the proper connections around the eye or anything like that. Finally, let's look at our last blink here. There we go. There we go. We've got a blink. And we can feel that fleshiness of the whole eye area right up to the brow. The eyes are not moving vertically. They're moving diagonally, which is what they're supposed to do. And it's not much, but it's just enough that you feel it. It doesn't feel robotic. And we could go even more in this. Like, we can push a few extra things, exaggerate certain moments. But now we've got an organic blink that feels alive. And once again, was there any secret formula to this? Did we go over and use a special plugin to do this? No. 90% of this was simply moving the eyes diagonally and understanding the timing, the spacing, the movement of the eye from the reference. And only using the top lid and bottom lid for, again, 90% of it. Everything else was just polish. As long as you get that main motion in the eyelids, that alone is going to be huge. So yeah, that's Blinks. I hope this demo was helpful. Hopefully it made sense, kind of showed a little bit of the thought process that goes into creating an animation like this and like understanding how things move. You can apply this thing to mouth motions, to brow motions, to hand motions. It's really analyzing and understanding what you're moving. From there, you can really push things to the next level. So yeah, with that, let's go over the chat and see if any questions I missed. If I did miss questions, if you can just post them again, that way I don't have to scroll through and try to search through the chat. It'll just make things a little faster. And I'm glad people like the hat. Thank you. And thanks for the reminder, because my mouth is super dry all of a sudden. Let's see, link Discord to Twitch so we can get cross-server subscriber emotes. Can you do that? If so, I'll definitely do that. I didn't realize that was a thing. That would be awesome. Let's see, can you explain a little, when do we blink as humans? So we typically blink, there's 3 moments that we will blink as humans. Let me go back full screen here. We will blink to moisten our eyes. That's number 1. Your eyes get dry, so blink, you blink. Now, this will change depending on who your character is. If they're nervous, they're going to blink more because their eyes are drying out. If you want a character to feel more like menacing, just don't have them blink. They're just staring and they're not blinking, and they still don't blink. And why aren't they blinking? What it creates is the feeling that, like, aren't their eyes uncomfortable? It's making me uncomfortable. They're not moistening their eyes. The next thing that we blink on is a change of direction. So if I'm looking one direction and I move to the other, usually there's going to be a blink in the middle. This helps us to avoid getting confused. Try keeping your eyes open and do this. It won't take long before you start kind of feeling dizzy and like there's an information overload. So instead, we look over, blink. It basically limits what we're seeing. And then when we open our eyes, we've got new information in front of us. It is essentially a limiter so that our brains don't get like overfilled with information. Now, this will change when someone's scared. When you're scared, your brain wants all that information. So you're looking, no blinks. If you're relaxed, blink. The second thing is a thought process where I'm doing something and maybe I'm like, let's say I'm animating and then my brain is going to switch gears, it switch rails and goes, oh, a thought. So maybe I left the oven on. So I'm working. Did I leave the oven on? And that blink is kind of a visual indicator that my brain just switched gears. And I don't even have to look in a different direction. It's just, wait, what happened? There's that thought process in there. Those are the three main areas where you're going to have blinks. And blinks, we did one version of a blink. There's many versions. There's fast blinks, there's slow blinks, there's half blinks where the eye just kind of flutters down. There's like exaggerated blinks where the eyes are really open. Every one of them is going to be slightly different. So this is one version. I did kind of a vanilla blink, kind of a relaxed blink.